4 years after the Galwan clash, India and Chinese military are finally moving back to their original position. Prime Minister Modi met Chinese President Xi, Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar met his Chinese counterpart, and now Rajnath Singh is meeting today his Chinese counterpart, of course. And to discuss more on this, like how India-China's relation is coming back on track, we have with us India's former Foreign Secretary Nirupama Rao. Welcome to the show, ma'am. Thank you. Nirupama Rao was also ambassador to China, so that is quite significant, and she has that expertise on India-China border relations as well. So, ma'am, I would like to ask you, what is your, first analysis of whatever developments that we are seeing in India-China relation? How do you see it?
Well, it is a positive development that disengagement is taking place. I mean, the announcement was made that the close confrontation between troops of the two sides, military personnel of the two sides, has come, at least for now, to an end in the areas concerned, in Depsang and Demchok. And the two sides are working out a system of coordinated patrolling so as to avoid incidents of the nature that we saw in Galwan, the tragedy that we saw in Galwan 4 years ago. But let me also caution our viewers that this is a long drawn out process, and although disengagement is happening, there are many further steps to be taken in order to de-escalate tensions along the India-China border, along the line of actual control.
So, but what exactly do you think led to this sort of, peace, at least even if temporarily that is happening? Because we saw a lot of, meetings happening between, military leaders, of course, some back channel talks as well. But nothing seems to be working. But suddenly, last 2-3 months, we see that, there have been developments regarding, resolving of some different, disagreements on border points. What exactly do you think worked for the Indian side? Is it because we chose to give, a strong, befitting reply to Chinese deployments on the border? Is that what really worked for us, you think?
Well, diplomacy is always a very painstaking process, and things cannot happen overnight. We had very, very high levels of tension along the line of actual control. And the fact that through the border meetings, through the meetings of the military commanders, and through the efforts made by the foreign ministries of the two sides and the governments of the two sides, today we are witnessing the announcement of de-escalation in the two remaining points of Depsang and Demchok along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. But this line of actual control has not been mutually defined or verified by the two countries together. So that in itself has led in the past to these pockets of disagreement. And our hope and our expectation is that the discussions to de-escalate tensions will continue, and the two sides can put in place a structure that is enduring, that is durable, that is workable, that will avoid the kind of confrontation, the clashes that we saw in Galwan after, in fact, an interregnum of 45 years when we did not have any military combat on the border.
Ma'am, we have other sort of relations as well with China when it comes to, especially trade relations. They are our biggest trade partner. For last few years, the government adopted certain strategies in order to curb Chinese investment, curb their imports. But a section of India's trade community, they always want that Chinese investment, that should creep in for India to become a bigger manufacturing hub. Even Chief Economic Advisor in July submitted a report that suggested that we need Chinese investment for that. So do you think on trade front as well, India would be more welcoming to China, or maybe still we are slightly hesitant towards that, because certainly strategically we want to sort of, de-align ourselves from China when it comes to trade?
See, I'm not privy to the government discussions in this matter. But as I read this situation, decoupling in a very precipitate, in a very hurried or rushed manner, does not take place very easily in today's globalized world. What we seek to establish are resilient supply chains, and also the input that we need for our manufacturers, the intermediate goods that we need. And until and unless we are able to establish that kind of self-reliance in these areas, we will continue to depend on outside involvement,
Yeah.
if I can use the word, in these manufacturers. For instance, 85% of our APIs for manufacture of pharmaceuticals come from China. So I believe that the aim and the strategy and the direction our policy should take is to reduce that dependence. And that will be a gradual process. It may take a few years to establish that, but I hope that process is underway because that is really what we need, technological self-reliance. That doesn't mean we are turning inwards or that we are becoming insular, but in the interest, in the national interest, and sometimes very often it happens in the interest of national security, we have to be more, or let me say, less dependent on outside countries. And I'm not naming China in particular, including China, but we have to develop that self-reliance so that our manufacturing industry can thrive, more jobs are created, and India becomes the manufacturing hub of the world, just as China did in the last few decades.
Last question. Maybe let's think from Chinese perspective. They were quite adamant to whatever border position that they held. But so right now we are seeing that there's a change of heart, at least as of now. This comes at a time when Trump is quite eminent in America. He has won the elections and is all set to take over. And we know how harsh, or maybe for lack of a better word, how harsh Trump was in his last tenure against China. Do you think China wanted to somehow cool off certain relations with a certain country, neighboring country, when it is already Trump heat is already something which is impending? So do you think that is a factor that worked for China, maybe pushing it for a certain thaw in this, relations with India?
Well, I would say that I wouldn't use words like adamant and change of heart because I think in diplomacy it's a very gradual process and both sides take positions. And obviously we had to safeguard our national interest and ensure our national security throughout, all these years that we were in discussion with the Chinese to disengage and to de-escalate tensions. So I would say, in these processes, in these discussions, we seek the ultimate emphasis is to safeguard the national interest. As far as the re-election of Mr. Donald Trump goes, obviously, he has a certain position on China, and it seems to be quite hard, and he is not talking about flexibility in that relationship or that approach that his administration, the U.S. administration under his presidency, will take towards China. So we will have to wait and see how this whole process unwinds, what the developments will be, and what the impact of that will be on the region. Because the U.S.-China relationship is a huge relationship, and it involves, I would say, the region, the Indo-Pacific, because today when we talk of tensions in the Indo-Pacific, it's the rise of China that has resulted in many disputes being, in a sense, revived, and the Chinese being much more assertive. They like to say that they are more proactive, but we use the word more assertive. And there's much more muscularity that is being demonstrated by the Chinese. And every action produces a consequent reaction, and you've seen how the Americans have reacted to that. So these are going to be very interesting times, I think, for all of us.
Well, you heard Nirupama Rao, India's former foreign secretary, who is quite hopeful that India-China would make more developments when it comes to peace in their relation. With such camera person Sachin Gupta, Atul Ranjan for NDTV.